Appreciate you taking some time to join us this afternoon, learn a little bit more about robotic process automation. Just to run through the agenda real quickly, we're going to do introductions for Jason and I. We'll touch on some high-level services that Redirect offers, as well as give a rundown of RPA capabilities and best uses. We'll spend the majority of the time on this webinar going through some specific use cases that we've rolled out both externally for clients as well as internally here at Redirect, and we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. Please feel free to submit any questions via the Zoom Q&A function as they come up, and we'll be happy to get to them as we go along. So for those of you who don't know me already, my name is Sam Protzman. I'm the National Account Executive with Redirect Consulting. I've been with the company for about 5 years, and I've been working closely with Jason to bring RPA to the real estate industry.
Thanks, Sam. I'm Jason Shedler. Been working in the real estate technology space for about 20 years. A lot of that time I spent working for MRI Software in various capacities, a few years at Equity Residential, and found myself here at Redirect trying to further the cause for automation.
So for those of you who don't know, a little bit of background on Redirect. We've been working in the real estate technology and business consulting space for 22 years now, actually. We are home to some of the most skilled and experienced MRI and Yardi consultants in the world. We cover a number of different areas beyond just the standard MRI and Yardi services. We are company and asset class agnostic. We work with commercial and residential, everyone from REITs and investment funds to third-party property managers. You see that customer support satisfaction rate, that's referring to the help desk services that we offer on both MRI and Yardi. And our team is extremely experienced. We're talking 15 plus years of average experience in the real estate and technology industry for each of our consultants. And one of the things that we believe really sets Redirect apart from some other companies that operate in this space is the fact that our consultants come from both a real estate and technology background. So we are not just software experts, but folks who have worked at real estate companies in the past, such as Jason, who has experience with Equity Residential, other folks at the company who have worked as controllers, CPAs. So we can really bring some industry best practices combined with our software expertise. A little bit of a background on our kind of core services here. Building off of that consultant experience that we have, we offer a lot of business process consulting to our clients, which differs a little bit from the approach you might get from an MRI or a Yardi or any software partner, really, where we're going to work with you to identify what your current state is, figure out where the gaps and inefficiencies are, and then identify the best way to address those areas that can be improved upon. So that can either be business process reviews, system selections, or going through implementations in various projects, working to make sure that we're getting you set up in a customized fashion that operates to the best capacity to how your company is structured. On the implementation side of things, that's really the nitty-gritty work that we do, mostly in MRI and Yardi, but also a lot of technical integration work, and the RPA work we do would fall under that as well. So implementations, customizations, data conversions, report writing, things of that nature. Finally, we've got support services, which I briefly mentioned. We do have a help desk for both Yardi and MRI, providing quick response time and high-level support for those companies that are looking for a little bit more hand-holding on MRI and Yardi. We also do a lot of work with end user training, ongoing testing, and support for larger projects. So I want to give a little bit of a background on robotic process automation before we jump into the use cases so that everyone can kind of understand what we're trying to achieve here. The first thing to understand is what RPA is actually capable of in terms of specific tasks and processes. So think about just about anything you or I would do on the computer or with a mouse, RPA is capable of. So this is tasks like logging into applications and then pulling data from those webs and applications. We can use RPA to connect to system APIs or to approximate APIs where they don't already exist. The biggest thing is performing in a workflow and following processes and decision trees to complete these tasks, such as reading and interpreting data, copying and pasting that data, reading and writing to databases, doing anything you'd like to do with emails and attachments, and then manipulating files and folders. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Jason to discuss some of the areas that we look to identify with processes with regards to automation.
Thanks, Sam. So just to reiterate what Sam said, building an automation, or when we talk about it, we'll refer to a bot. And in our case, we talk a lot about Rosie. We've named our first bot Rosie. It's really very similar to training a person to do tasks for you. It's just that the tasks have to be very prescriptive, and you can't expect a bot or an automation to do something that requires judgment or creativity. But we all spend a lot of time in our work days, and we have employees who spend a lot of time in their work days that do things that don't require creativity or judgment, that are just rote, repetitive tasks. And the goal, and what's so exciting about RPA, is that you can take those things away from them so that they're able to perform more important things. So what kind of tasks are the best to try to automate? This is a pretty good list here. So things that are, like I said, computational. If you have to be able to describe what to do and when, and if you can train software or a bot or Rosie to do that thing for you. When you're doing something, or you observe one of your employees to be doing something that is incredibly monotonous, it's a really good clue that you should be performing some kind of automation instead. Things that just, it's like I type in a few keystrokes and then do a few mouse clicks, and then I look at the other screen and grab something and repeat and do that same thing over and over again. You'll see examples in this webinar that are perfect examples of things that are super monotonous. When you look at things that you want to automate, frequency plays a factor in your ROI. So, we have clients that have these monotonous tasks that happen either every day or once a week or once a month. We all know the spreadsheets that get sent around through email that someone has to do data entry every month. That's referring to frequency. And so things that have some degree of frequency make a really good candidates for RPA. Just a note on that, we have seen things and we've automated things before that are only going to happen once, but it would take a person 2 weeks straight to get through this stack of work, and then when they're done, it would be over. Whereas we can train a bot to do it. It might take a couple hours of effort, and then the bot will just churn through it faster than the person. An example was we helped a client bring a property on board, or several properties on board, and we trained a bot to take all the ending balances out of the resident statements, split them up into multiple files, take the ending balance, plug it into, in this case, I believe it was MRI, and then when it was finished, it attached the file to the resident ledger for further review. That would have taken data entry people, the amount of volume we had, it would have taken data entry people a really long time to do, but it didn't take the bot too long to program, so we decided it would be good use. Generally speaking, though, frequency plays a role. You'll see this pop up, this fourth one, using multiple applications. Whenever you see that you have a person using a screen side by side with a software here and a software here, and the head, swiveling back and forth, we're either comparing data or we're taking data from here and putting it here. That's a good clue that there's a chance to automate something. A bot can just as easily log into both applications and do this comparison task or whatever the task might be. But these are just like good symptoms of how to spot. The last one, and I'll break this down a little further, are things that we at Redirect refer to as processes that are chatty, and they involve multiple people. So like an example is we have Bob, who is an employee who sends an email with an attachment. Maybe it's a spreadsheet, maybe it's a Word doc, maybe it's a PDF. And he sends that to Barbara, and Barbara has to take that spreadsheet and do some data entry into MRI or Yardi or some other system. And when she's done, she's going to send an email to Jack. Jack is going to look at each one of those records and refer to some other system to find some corollary and key in some additional data. And when he's done, he's going to email Sue. Sue's the approver. And when she hits the checkbox, that process is done. But if you look at this process, maybe each of these people has an hour to spend or a couple hours to spend. But because there are so many gaps between people and there's so much email flying around, there's a really good chance that the length of time to deliver gets stretched out from something that could take a couple hours to something that now is taking in excess of a week. And it's slowing your business down, or it's creating a bad experience for a stakeholder. So if we look at this in terms of robotic process automation, this task could be the same thing, only Bob will send an email with an attachment to Rosie. Rosie will do the data entry that Barbara does, and at the same time, do the cross-reference that Jack was doing and put the additional data in. And when Rosie is done, and I'll show you some examples of how Rosie communicates, Rosie will email Sue and Sue will approve the task. So that's an example of using automation for something that maybe didn't take a lot of time, but it definitely took a lot of hours because there were so many people involved. Now, obviously, Barbara and Jack are thrilled to not have to be distracted by this thing or find someone to cover for this task when they're on PTO. So that's chatty. Before we get in, and the rest of the time we'll be spending on pretty much demonstrations and case studies of things that we've done for our clients or internally, I just want to cover some of the benefits of RPA. So we've talked about these a little bit, but one of them is that your employees or yourself get to spend more time paying attention to things that drive higher value. Strategy and creativity are two of those things. This leads to higher engagement levels. No one likes to feel like they're doing something that is beneath their skill set and just are assigned to do it, and they spend hours doing it while the actual work they're being measured on suffers. This can lower operating costs. So like we've had definitely a couple of our clients tell us that they were able to scale better. One of our largest clients, and you can see there's a case study on our website, it's with Brian Properties. Their primary goal was we're growing rapidly and we don't want to have to scale the same number of people for the same number of entities that we're taking on. And so we need to start to automate this stuff so we don't have to scale up our employee costs as we're growing as an organization. And we've been really successful in helping them maintain their levels, where we've had, I've had another client who told me that they had some restructuring and they're able to actually lower the size of one of their groups that was using RPA. They had an employee move to another department and they didn't have to backfill. So those are great examples of just lowering operating costs. Scalability, I already kind of stole my own thunder about Brian Properties being able to maintain. Obviously, we're going to reduce the number of hours on these task-related items. Delivery time, I've already talked about, with in particular the chatty process that has multiple people in it. We're going from delivery times of 1 and 2 weeks to delivery times of like right now or overnight or in a few hours. And the last thing, and we probably don't pay enough attention to this, but the accuracy is going to be higher because a bot or an automation isn't going to miskey. It's literally just taking data from one place to another without the potential for turning a 4 into a 7 or miskeying some data. So those are the benefits. And now we'll jump into some of the demonstrations and case studies. The first one that I want to talk about is we have a client who has 300 owners that all like to have their own packet of reports sent to them once a month that shows like the performance and other key data that they're looking for. So from a manual perspective, this client had a person who would look at an owner's preferences, run 3 to 5 reports, save them to a folder, attach them to an email, send them to an owner, and they would do this 300 times, which is, if you just, simple math, if we're doing it 5 minutes per owner, it's 25 hours a month. I don't know that that was the actual case, but I could see this taking longer than that. It's countless interrupts to what they're working on. It's also being interrupted countless times. And so it's taking 1.5 weeks to deliver. And if you think about something that's done every month that you're spending a week and a half doing or 2 weeks doing, it means you're spending half your days doing it. It's pretty untenable. So what we did, we built a bot, and that bot logs into Yardi. It has its own, by the way, it has its own login. So it has access only to the things that it needs to do for this client, and that's it. The bot would go and print all the reports kind of in bulk based on the owner requirements, breaking it up to be as efficient as possible. And the bot is able then to save those files to PDF and or Excel, depending on what's needed. The bot is able to compile reports and group them by owner. This is all based off of a mapping that our client set up that showed what each owner wanted and how they wanted it. And then at the end, able to send one email to each owner, actually able to consolidate all these reports into one packet, which was something that our client, I don't think, was doing before. And then at the end provides an execution report. And I'll show you an example of this, noting any exceptions that happened. Sometimes you know how it is, you go to log into your system, whether it's MRI or Yardi, and run a report and nothing comes out, or something unexpected happens. And so our bot will log those moments where something unexpected happens and send a notification. So, not always 100%, but always 100% of here's what got done, here's what still needs attention. And so the result is this runs overnight for on-time delivery. Basically, it essentially is like 0 time because it's running overnight on the day it's due and it's done in that morning. And the delivery time is essentially 0. And our friend Cindy no longer has to do this task, and she's delighted. Someone asked a question, it's a good question, do we use a specific RPA framework? We are pretty entrenched in UiPath, but we also use Flow, and we've also used a couple of other systems just here and there for point solutions, but UiPath is probably the most prevalent for us. Okay, so that's distribution of monthly reports to owners. Now, I can't show you our actual client stuff because there's private data and stuff. And so what I did is we created an example of this internally with our generic database that we can show you, like a much simpler example of what we're doing for one of our clients. And so what we have here is we have a bot that's going to run multiple tenant reports. As it does, it's going to separate those tenant files based on the tenant ID. It's going to publish the files to a directory, tenant directory for each. Then it's going to collate the files. And finally, it's going to email the files. And I'll show you the whole thing. And bear with me. So the RPA is so exciting. This is the UiPath platform. Real quick, showing you that there's nothing in the final folder. And from here, we're going to go ahead and run the automation. And so now the bot is performing on its own without any help. So it's already actually logged into MRI. In most cases, we'd show you the login actually occurring, and it's looking for a certain report. In this case, the CM ledger report in MRI, and it's going to go ahead and run that. What I was starting to say while this bot runs a report is that what's funny to me is I do demos and webinars and private client calls on RPA all the time, and it's really exciting software that we're building virtual robots to do all these tasks and save people all this time. But then when we go to show it, it's kind of boring because it's watching a bot run a report, which we've all seen happen a million times. But the exciting part is that my hands aren't on the keyboard. No one was performing these tasks. So here's the bot taking this ledger report and based on a structure we gave it, saving it to a file. And in the background, the bot actually split that report ran for multiple tenants, and it actually split it. If it hasn't already, it should be doing it at any moment. I think that was actually happening in the background here. So now the bot, and again, just forgive our example here, but the bot's going to run the tenant statement of account, similar report. It's going to run it for the same tenants. The report's running. When it's done, it's going to save that. It's going to save it and split it, split the PDFs. And again, while we're doing this, we're getting a lot more requests from our clients on manipulating, files like PDFs, splitting them, combining them, running them, and emailing. So here's statement of accounts PDF being saved. So now the bot's clearing the communication center, which is nice. A lot of people don't do that, but we've asked our bot to do it. And that's the end of the bot doing its work. And so now we can see, if we look in the final folder, you can see that it's created a folder for each tenant. And inside of each tenant folder, there's a packet that has the receivables ledger. That's page 1 of this. And then if we go ahead and scroll, it's parsed it based on that lease ID at the top. And if we scroll, we'll see the statement of account here, which was parsed based on that lease ID there, and created one individual PDF out of that. Here's an example with tenant 0004. Same thing, page 1 is the receivables ledger. Page 2 is the statement of account. Now, if we look, we actually have saved versions of these reports separately. So we have separate ledger PDF for each tenant, and then we have separate statement of account PDF for each tenant as well. So the point of this, and as you're watching and listening to the different demos and use cases that we're doing, is to think about the capabilities of RPA and how you might creatively be able to use them in your organization, as opposed to watching what we're showing and thinking about how it applies directly. It's really like the sky is kind of the limit. It's really limited by our creativity and how we're able to come up with good examples. So that's the actual statement of account. And then here's an email example that can be sent out. Rosie sent this to me. It's a single PDF packet, pulled Neo based on the name of the tenant, attached the tenant ledger and statement of account, and came up with some messaging based on a template that we created. So that is our first example. The next one around batch entry and posting. And so we have, this is another example that we created based on something that one of our clients is doing. As one of our earliest RPA clients has a corporate accounts receivable spreadsheet nightmare that gets sent every month to home office, and has in it every marketing expense for every property. Most of those marketing expenses are sent, they're paying for them as a property management company, but then they need to split the cost out amongst all the properties. And so there's a spreadsheet that has like a proration for each individual property. And they now send that report to Rosie. Rosie does all the proration and does the data entry and sends a report out. So what I'm going to show you is an example that's based on that. Again, in our demo database, where the bot will input corporate accounts receivable batch and MRI. And as it's doing that, it's reading Excel, it's doing data entry, it's doing data scraping. Then it's going to post any unposted AR batches. which shows its ability to post batches and send an email notification. So if you look at this spreadsheet, this is just a mock-up. The one that we have that's real life has many columns. It goes out to double-digit columns. It's enormous, but this is just for demonstration purposes. We have different sites and accounts. We have 3 different entities in here, different fees, and we intentionally didn't send it to the bot sorted so you can see the bot, how it handles stuff coming in out of order. The first thing, so that's the spreadsheet. We'll go ahead and open UiPath now. And by the way, you won't, our clients never see UiPath run. That's just us showing a demo here. This actually happens on a hosted server. So this is the bot quickly going through the spreadsheets, separating them into different tabs based on entity and totaling each entity's totals. And then it saves that one file as 3 different files. So again, not necessary, but just something we can show you as an example of what RPA can do. That was the bot logging into MRI. Pulling open, you can see it works faster than I can work. Pulls open a batch entry screen, and it's now reading from one of the files and putting in. So this is the file it created for entity 150, and it's going to put in, I think there's 2 or 3 charges for entity 150. So here's the bot now matching control totals, which if they didn't match, we could program the bot to send a notification that there's something out of whack. And here is the second entity. And this is actually when watching RPA is a little more exciting when it moves faster than people can move. Sometimes the bot, they're limited to how fast the software can move, but other times we can really let it loose if it's working like data entry in one screen. So that's number 2. Now it's going to save the batch. Again, matching the credit and debit. And then finally, it's going to do our third entity. Okay, so the last one's done.
Hey, Jason, we got a quick question in the chat about how the bot actually gets the file. I know there's a couple of different ways we can set that up.
That's a great question. So there's 2 ways the bot can get the file. One is the bot can go, all right, so there, just as we're wrapping this up, I'll answer that question in a second. What you're seeing now is that the bot sent the batch results to the stakeholder. In this case, was sent to me and one of my colleagues with some data showing what the bot did. So it consolidated these things. It scraped that batch entry screen for each one to give a record of what was actually performed. So there's 2 files now. There's actually several files. There was the original file. There's the bot parsing that file into separate entities. And then there's this file that the bot created by scraping the batch entry screen. So to finish answering the question, in this case, in the real example that this is based off of, our client had already in process someone who would gather all the data and email the file to a person whose job it was to do all this stuff that the bot's doing. So we just took that same step and said, all right, don't email that person now, just email Rosie and Rosie will do the work. And that's where we've kind of solve the problem for them. In other cases, we can have the bot actually go create the file. So if the file came from MRI or it came from some software and it was able to go and run the report or go to log into a bank account and download a statement or whatever, sometimes we'll have the bot actually generate the report for itself. Sometimes we'll send an email to the bot. Hopefully that answers the question. So the next step on this one is so the bot has sent this email to us saying, attached is your AR data entry for the report. And then we're going to say back to the bot, Rosie, we don't have to be polite. We actually have to say something very specific. We'll say, please post all batches. And we'll send that to Rosie. Rosie has her own Outlook account and she monitors her email really well. And when she sees that, she'll then go log into the software and post the batches, which is what we should see here in a moment. That's what we're seeing now. So this is the bot responding to the email and posting each batch. So now this is an example of an RPA where it's actually multi-phased. It does part one of its job and then it waits for a response from the stakeholder as to what to do next. Now, if there had been an issue, it's good to have some of these steps in there. You could go and correct the issue and then still message the bot, please post the batches. So here's an example of, we like to always capture what data got done. So this is showing for each of those batches that it scraped earlier, it created a processed column in column J, which was empty before, and now the bot for each batch that it's processed puts the word yes, just so we have a record and reference of what the bot's been doing. Good. All right, so now getting into our third or fourth example, we're going to talk about document scanning. So we've created, again, this is just a proof of concept. It's with pretty generic redirect data where the bot is going to read a document and then classify it. In this case, we're sending the bot both checks and invoices. And we're saying, if it's a check, scan it. If it's an invoice, scan it and put it into AP. Or in our, I don't think we've gone to AP at this point. We're having it scan it and put the data into a spreadsheet. But we could really put it anywhere. You've already seen the data entry that bots can do. So it's got to tell first, is this a check or an invoice? Number 3, extract the data. Number 4, do some user validation, which I'll explain. To now we've had all of our automations have been what we call unattended or autonomous. This is an example of user in the loop automation, where we need a user to validate what the bot is doing because it's not always certain. Step 5, export results, and then it will move on to the next file. So what you're seeing down the right-hand side is a little screen grab of the way the flow works inside of UiPath. So it's going to first load the taxonomy in order to be able to understand what it's looking at, read the document, classify it, extract data, do some user validation. This is where the person gets in the loop, and then export the results and then consolidate into a table. So all these steps can happen, and it actually can do all these steps and leave a stack of user validation at the end. So it's actually done all its work for everything it can do, but for user validation, wait on the user. And so what we're seeing here is a little bit more of that UiPath screen. This would not be what the user would be exposed to. There'll be more of like a front end for it. But for each thing it's doing, it's actually tracking like a confidence level. And you can set a threshold that says, if you're 80% confident, just go ahead and put the data into the system. But if you're less than 80%, I want you to flag that to a user and let them tell us what's the actual right thing. And then the final step, once the user is given the go-ahead, the bot would enter the result into a system and then process the next file. So so here on the right-hand side, you'll see there's a file for scan checks. There's a folder for checks, a folder for invoices, and a folder for things that are processed. And then you can see below those folders at the top right, there's 4 actual artifacts. There's 2 checks and 2 invoices. And so what we will do is we've dropped all those into the monitoring folder. And you can see the lights down like a Christmas tree kind of flowing down the screen where the bot is doing the work it's supposed to do, where it's loaded taxonomy, read the document, classified it, and is at the point of extracting data where you see like the hourglass or the time symbol, and that's where it's waiting on a user. Now, this is more of like a front end, what the user would see. The bot is saying it's a check, which it got that right with good confidence. It's showing the company name is SDF 87 Pennyfield owner at 100%. We're saying you're right. Looking at the check date, the bot thought 58% on that it's 5/11/2020. It's actually correct. So we're checking the box. We're telling the same on the check amount, invoice number, and then we're saving it. And what's awesome, this is what's called, if you heard the term machine learning, I'm sure many of you know what that means, but machine learning is essentially a feedback loop where every time the user interacts with it and tells the bot you were actually correct or you were incorrect, and here's where the data actually is or how you should interpret it, the bot gets smarter and it adds that to its library or database of how to process, and it gets better and better. And so you'd expect a process like this maybe starts off a little rocky, where there's a lot of user validation happening, but over time, especially seeing the same types of invoices and checks, the bot gets really good at interpreting the data that it's seeing. And then while this is running, I got another question about where, so I had said we're using UiPath quite a bit to do our RPA, and where does it run? Does it run on client machines or our machine or either? The answer to that is we always offer more than one solution for our clients, but our clients only choose one, which is that we host the UiPath software on our server. So you'll actually never see it. It just, the bot just runs. So we host it. You'll never actually see it run. It's running in the background. That's the typical way to do it. For us internally, we use UiPath. So we have, operators that are running it sometimes manually, observing it. Obviously, we're building it, so we have to be able to monitor it. So for us, we host it for ourselves and we interact with it quite a bit. I would anticipate that at some point we'll have a client that is, further along and wants us to help build the RPA solutions, but they want to run it themselves and not have us host it, which we're totally happy and comfortable to do. Okay, moving along. So that was the invoice and check scanning. Into bank rec. This is like, we have 2 really popular requests, ones that come in more often than others. One of them I told you was about manipulating documents and collating them and emailing them, ownership report distribution or resident report distribution, what have you. We get requests for that quite a bit. The other one that we get a lot of requests for and we've gotten quite good at is bank reconciliation. And we're saving our clients a lot of time on this. So the typical, if you're not familiar with bank rec, it's just like you do with your personal checking account. You look at, what you have and what you've spent, and you try to validate that the checks that went out actually cleared, and then if there's anything that you didn't expect, that you account for that somehow. And so what's happening at property management companies is you have a person who's going to look at a statement transaction, compare it to the system, perform some action, and they're going to do that 2,000 times in a row. So what does that look like? For our most successful client, they were spending 80 hours. Yours might be different. Yours might be more or less. That person's getting interrupted a million times. They have an actual other job to do, but this is taking like half of their time, or it's 2 people trying to get it done in 1 week. Every month that they dread, it takes a week to deliver, and nobody likes it. I don't think anybody likes doing bank recs. So I feel confident in my statement here. So what we've done, and I don't have a demo to show you, but just conceptually, we've done this two ways. In this case, our bot is actually logging into a bunch of different banking websites and pulling down PDFs. And then it prints those statements to a CSV. And then our bot will scrape and index the bank statement into a database, and using rules that our client and us define. Sometimes you're looking for multiple transactions that cancel out one. So we look at the data and we come up with rules that the bot can use to reconcile. And then based on what happens, the bot will then go and create either unposted journal entries, cash receipts, payables, and mark everything reconciled. And so the end result of that is we took something that our client was spending 80 hours of people time on, that now delivers the result in 4 hours, and does it from 96 to 99% accuracy, which I know is about as good as it gets. We've seen automatic bank rec solutions. They do a decent job of getting the low-hanging fruit. We're doing an excellent job at getting it like pretty thoroughly done. And then here's Rosie's communication on that. So I've redacted, this is a client email, so I've redacted anything that's like personal to the client or their company. But Rosie sends an email that says, here's what I did. Here's some artifacts of what I did. If I ran into an error, here's the error message I saw. It's saying there were, giving the total of number of transactions that it encountered. It's doing on check uploads, what's the number? In this case, the bot was able to process 97.85%, which is huge. There's only 17 that failed. And I probably cherry picked the best one, where on deposits, it got 100%. And this email goes out to our client once a month, and they got 80 hours of their life back, which we feel really good about. So as I was preparing for this webinar, I was looking for one of these emails to our clients to just do an example. And so in my inbox, I did a search for emails from Rosie. And I see more questions, by the way, in the chat, which I'm close to done here. So I'll answer all the questions in a minute. So I put in a search for emails from Rosie, and I was kind of surprised. Somewhat surprised at what I saw, because we've been doing a lot of automation at Redirect using the bot. And so to give you an idea of some of the things we're doing, we're creating, so like when we have a client, say, if one of you called us and said, hey, I'm interested in doing an RPA, we'll go into HubSpot and we'll put in, this is the client, this is the deal name, and then our bot is going to go ahead and create like a template in our statement of work software. And that happens just automatically. And that's helping in our company for us to be more consistent with how we do statements of work. And then when we get a little further along, the bot actually will take that statement of work and with it create a project plan. So consistently, our consultants will be able to use the same software to do project plans, and they'll be created instantly as the project is getting created, which again drives consistency for Redirect, and it helps us to satisfy our clients better. The bot's going to go ahead and set up all the accounts in our accounts receivable platform where our consultants track time and where we send invoices from. And that's going to be done consistently and immediately, so we don't have people waiting for that project to get set up to log time to. That helps our people, again, consistently to enter their time on time. Our bot processes change orders. It generates invoices. Whenever we create a new project, it's generating a Microsoft team, putting all these artifacts into one place that we all can have access to, all of us that are a part of that project. Our bot is moving our signed contracts into a SharePoint folder pertinent to that. Our bot is also taking a moment at each step of the way to update our data warehouse so that we have a 360-degree view of our clients and what they want and what's happening at Redirect. And it's doing all that, it's doing more. And I didn't even have this slide in my deck until today, but I searched for that email, and I just did a search for Rosie stuff. And you can see that from today around 11, when I was working on this, like I have just a ton of emails from Rosie saying, I actually love this one, Rosie saying, hey, the deal got closed but the process failed, which means somewhere along the way, there was a piece of data missing or something. And we actually get notified that something didn't happen and we can fix it. But for other ones, I have my change orders done. My project's been created in teamwork. There's a new deal proposal being created, et cetera, et cetera. So we at Redirect, we're our favorite client. We're our best client of RPA. We use it a lot. We've gotten good at it for ourselves. We've learned a lot of lessons about it. And now we're in a place where, as you can see from the demos I've shown, we've helped our clients save a lot of time as well. So hopefully that was, go ahead, Sam.
Just to add into that a little bit, another sort of indirect benefit of using RPA for some of these processes is it helps normalize consistency around things that you're doing internally. So for us, on some of those examples Jason shared, we do internally, we have to do these processes and these tasks in the same way over and over to have the automation run properly. And it's the same for clients that we have rolled automations out for. There's naming conventions that need to be correct, prompts to Rosie to run that need to be consistent. And that can really help build organizational consistency around these tasks. And that becomes infectious and it starts to carry over into other areas of the business. The other thing that I would add here, getting back to the bank reconciliation example, is we are not looking to automate just for the sake of automating. We have plenty of clients, especially on Yardi, who are able to take advantage of the automatic bank reconciliation functionality. And when we are exploring opportunities to automate, that's not going to be the first place we go necessarily. We want to make sure that we're identifying the easiest and best way for you to handle these pain points that you're experiencing. The fact of the matter is a lot of the prime opportunities for automation, there aren't other solutions out there yet, especially when you're talking about processes that involve multiple people or multiple systems that aren't designed to connect to each other. And that's where we can really identify some of the opportunities for automation. This isn't a new technology. It is relatively new to the real estate industry because real estate has historically been a little bit slow to adopt new tech. If you go to industry events for other more tech forward industries like the finance industry, retail, manufacturing, you'll hear that RPA has been deployed and utilized for the last decade, and they're really pushing the bounds of what you can do with automation. One of the big areas it's used at non-real estate companies is during the HR process for new employee onboarding, managing credentials, managing benefits packages, compensation packages, things of that nature. So while most of the use cases that we've covered today have been related to the accounting and finance world of the real estate industry, that is far from the only application for RPA. And there's a lot of opportunity to apply it to other areas of the business. We did get a question about receiving a link to this video. We are absolutely going to follow up with everyone with this recording once we're able to publish it online. I'm also going to include the case study that we recently published with a company that we've done multiple automations with, so that you have a chance to take a look at that. And then Jason, I know we had a question a few minutes ago about handling bank password expirations, and also if you wanted to expand a little bit. I know one of the more frequent questions we get is around security of keeping this information and putting some controls in place.
There's several ways to deal with. So the question was how we handle bank password expirations. It's, that all passwords expire. So there's a lot of different ways to handle it. It really depends on the solution. One of the things that is kind of a best practice is that we have a software called Orchestrator where our clients can maintain their own credentials on Rosie's behalf, so that only Rosie and our client have access to the passwords, and then that just needs to be maintained by our clients. But we can, in things that are less sensitive, have Rosie read from a file, or if Rosie has her own login, which is really a best practice, Rosie can manage her own password expirations by preempting it and changing the password preemptively. So yeah, a lot of different ways to deal with that. We definitely look at that and things like multi-factor authentication, which we're able to work with. But before we start any project, we like to look for those kind of things that could like cause us some grief But so far, no issues with any of those kind of things. So. What other questions? We have definitely a few minutes. Super happy that all of you guys could join and see. We're excited to share this with you. We think it's kind of game-changing stuff if you're into operations. Yeah, happy to take questions now, or you see my email address there on the screen. I can take your questions, through email when you think of them.
Yeah, and just to add in a little bit at a higher level, we've given some examples on what we've done. There's definitely some processes that we get requests on more frequently than others, but when we start discussing the opportunity for RPA, we do really challenge companies to take an internal look at what are the things that we are doing that fit one or many of the characteristics that we reviewed. That would be computational, monotonous, frequent, chatty, and multi-systemed. And where are the areas that we are spending a lot of time on things that fit these characteristics? Because each company is different. The bank rec example we had up there, we helped a company save over 70 hours a month. Some companies, their bank rec process isn't that complicated. It might not be the right target for automation. So we really like to work with each individual company to kind of dig deep and see what would be the best place to start with automation, and see if we have a chance to save some time, save some money, and really make everyone's lives easier by taking these types of tasks off of their plate so that they can put their skills to use.
Yeah, Sam, you hit on something that I'd like to share. I didn't mention this time, is that our RPA team, so I oversee the technical team as well as the RPA team, which is a really important thing, because not everything is, RPA is not the solution for every problem. A lot of times when I talked about on this slide, the fact that you're using multiple applications and you're taking data from one system to another. Well, if somebody told me to solve that problem, first I would try to find out if there's an API, or is there a good way to handle that through an import-export process? Because those are more elegant solutions to moving data from one system to another. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes there just isn't a way to solve that, or there's not an economical way to solve that, and that's where RPA starts to come in. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is we're excited to tell you everything RPA can do, but we definitely don't want to jam everything into the RPA category of solution. We have a team full of technical experts that can solve things in many different ways, and we like to stick to RPA when it absolutely makes the most sense.
And I think that brings us full circle to kind of the intro and redirect that we did at the beginning of this presentation, where at the end of the day, we want to be a strategic partner for everybody that we work with. So we're not going to jump into let's do RPA right away, or let's add on to your MRI or Yardi software platform. Let's really work together to figure out where the biggest pain points are and what the best way to solve for them is going to be for each individual company. So even going beyond the RPA work, we really take a lot of pride in helping companies figure out the best way to move forward from a technology and operations perspective. And while RPA is just one piece of the puzzle, it's an extremely effective one, one that we're very proud to be kind of on the leading edge on with the real estate industry. And we'll send out some follow-up information following this call, but really appreciate everyone joining us this afternoon. And feel free to reach out with follow-up questions, or to Jason or I to schedule a more personal call to see if there might be an opportunity for RPA at your company.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a great day.